You're listening to Trek FM.
Welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM's 50th anniversary rewatch project, where the hosts of the network get together and discuss for you all 729 episodes and movies of the Star Trek franchise. I'm your host, Brandon-Shea Mutala, reporting to you from the next Emanation. And joining me today is...
Aaron Harvey, and I'm just reliving Vegas over and over and over, and it won't get out of my head.
You did something really bad and are being punished for it now.
Apparently.
Chip and Dales were involved, I think.
Choke again.
In case you can't tell, we're talking about 2 episodes of Star Trek Voyager, Ex Post Facto, which I have no clue what means, and Emanations, in which we meet Mark Twain the alien.
Well, Ex Post Facto actually means the thing done afterward. From a thing done afterward, which is Latin. One of our many Latin Star Trek titles that we get throughout the run of all the Trek series. Mm-hmm. You want me to tell you a little bit about Ex Post Facto?
Sure.
Tom Paris is convicted of a murder, which he denies committing, and he is, as a punishment on this alien world, forced to relive over and over and over again the last moments of the murder victim's life. And it's up to the Voyager crew to prove that he did not commit the crime and to figure out a way to get the implant out of him before it kills him, because every time he relives this memory, he gets more and more neural damage.
Inches closer and closer to death.
Yes. Which is not what they're apparently, that this punishment is not supposed to be that. However, it does sound like in their society, if you can't relive this murder over and over and over again every, 32 hours or something like that?
14.
14?
They just kill you.
Basically it's death anyway. So you're not supposed to apparently experience
pain or anything. Yeah, they're not a barbaristic society or anything here.
No, except for every 14 hours you're just dying. I thought that was a little bit of a mixed message there somehow, in that we're not cruel. We are every 14 hours, but not indiscriminately.
That is a barbaric punishment.
Yes. And before the podcast, you and I were talking about the story isn't really a fair murder mystery, because there's the tenet of a murder mystery is you have to have all the clues that the audience, the person who's either reading the book or watching the show, can actually solve this mystery. And we can't, because we don't know enough about the alien biology or the clues that are there. Those can only be, discovered by somebody in universe.
Mm-hmm, yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I loved watching Matlock, and I would love trying to figure out who the killer was, right? And in this, there's no way I can know. I would never have noticed that Tom Paris was the same height as her or not the same height as her or, whatnot. And the dog is just a little bit too subtle, I think, but... I don't know. I mean, it's still a good episode, and I enjoy it a lot. But
I like the film noir look that they were going for. I think that was kind of fun. It was sort of interesting. There were some things that familiar. We have the Angel One matte painting from TNG, which is their planet.
Yep.
Which tends to be a lot of planets. The aliens have 10 forward walls. They have those wall kind of diagonal triangle padding things that one of the offices has just lifted that right off of the Enterprise D. There were some interesting things that I thought it was kind of cool. The Star Trek 6 desk lamps. So there's basically they just sort of borrowed all of these bits and pieces from other things to kind of create this society.
And that's why they gave it that title, Ex Post Facto, right? A thing past. So
exactly.
One thing I wanted to talk about with this episode is Neelix.
Okay.
I love Neelix. And I know that a lot of people don't, but I think he is such a fun character. He's such an optimistic person that he's a joy to watch. And this episode, it has one of the shining examples for me. When Janeway's asking him about it, and he's like, to be honest, whenever I saw the Numiri, I always left before the intimidation. And he just starts cackling like it's the funniest thing he's ever said. And Janeway just rolls her eyes at him and walks behind him, and she's like, oh my goodness gracious. I don't know. I love that aspect of Neelix, and it makes me laugh. Even still, seeing this episode as many times as I have, I still laugh when I see Neelix do things like this. What do you think of Neelix?
I think that he got a bad rap as a character, honestly. I mean, a lot of the characters that people, get upset with over time, like Wesley Crusher or, just whatever, pick a character that somebody doesn't like. They get a bad rap because we're now constantly watching these, as witnessed by this very podcast. We're analyzing these episodes over and over and over again, and I think you spend more time as a viewer in the long run with these characters than maybe they were spent with when they were actually developing them. So there might be things today that they would do to change them and make them maybe less annoying, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the way his character was. It's I think it's kind of interesting, and he brings a different dynamic to the crew.
Yeah.
And I love in an early episode before this, actually in a time travel Voyager sort of way, in a block that I've already done, which I will be doing in the future, where Kes and Neelix show up to a briefing because they called the senior staff. So it's like, well, I'm the senior Talaxian. Mm-hmm. She's the senior Ocampa. And Janeway's like, yeah, you got a point, I guess. So I really think they brought something interesting early on, and I kind of wish that they were able to pull that through a little bit more. I guess Neelix really did, sort of. He became more of the crew and less of a Talaxian later on than he maybe should have.
Mm-hmm. What did you think about Neelix calling Tuvok Mr. Vulcan?
I think it would have been, the first time or two, okay, but after that, maybe he could have, he had to have known that was not what he was. I think it just became something that he did to poke at Tuvok.
Right. Exactly. Like at the beginning, when he first meets him in Caretaker, it's understandable. He's like, I am Vulcan. He's like, I'm Neelix. That gives him a hug, right? So, which is another great Neelix scene when he gives Tuvok a big hug, right? But I don't know. I think it's cute that he did it through the whole thing. Some people are like, oh, it's racist and stuff. And I'm like, I just think it's Neelix just trying to get underneath Tuvok's thick hide, right? So,
well, not any more than like Quark, a human. And so it's like, I don't know. I think that's going a little too deep.
Yeah,
honestly, but and in that same scene that you were mentioning before, when he was talking about the Numiri, how they just avoid them. Afterwards, if you follow them onto the bridge, you get the early Janeway with hands on hips scene, but it is timed exactly at the same time that they turn on the view screen, so she sounds like she has sound effects when she puts her hands on her hips. So if you go back and watch that, it's like. So now in my headcanon, every time that it's like an effect that they can activate. They can just make her hands go on her hip with a button.
That was funny. Yeah, it's a good episode. I mean, it's not my favorite from season 1, but I do enjoy it. It's neat to watch. It's very reminiscent of that Matter of Perspective from Next Generation, and the To the Journey people just did a comparison on this not that long ago. But it is very similar to that. But
Is it me, or would you like one of the just internal consistencies of the episode? It's like the scientist that they were talking to. So, it's like, I knew that you were in prison and blah blah blah. It's like, why? How would you know that? Would you? Hi, my name's Tom Paris. By the way, I was in prison back on Earth. Like, where did he get this information? It was just there was a little bit more knowledge than I think that either side would have had about each other.
Well, you told me yesterday, you're like, oh, and I know about doctors. I had heart surgery. I don't know. Maybe he's just like, I was in prison. Maybe he was.
Yeah, that's true. That is possible that
he's trying to be intimidating. I was in a New Zealand penal colony.
Maybe that's possible. And I do think it was interesting that they want to avoid conflict with these two warring factions, but they still chose a side to go ask for a specific piece of hardware and didn't even tell the other side.
Yeah, that one was weird. That did not seem like something that, with what we've come to know about Janeway, that did not seem like something that she would do, where she'd be like, get involved.
Yeah.
So
It's early days, so I guess I can kind of see them playing it out. But yeah, that not what she comes to be. We don't see that, I don't think.
Yeah. Anywho. It's good. I don't have anything else to add. You got anything else to add?
No, I think it was a serviceable episode. I know that Robert Duncan McNeil enjoyed shooting it because it was something different for the actors to do, just the way he had to experience it. So,
well, should we move on to Time's Arrow Part 3?
Yeah. Woohoo! Sure.
Excellent.
Is it the journey of a lifetime?
Yeah. Give me a synopsis there, Aaron.
So for Emanations, we have Voyager has discovered, they think they found a new element that's not on the Federation periodic element chart. And they're around a ringed planet with asteroids creating this ring. And they beam into this asteroid and discover that the energy readings are actually coming from these basically bodies that have sort of been wrapped up in, kind of looks like Halloween...
Spider webs.
Spider webs, yeah, exactly. Which turns out to actually be the
skin
secretions, the skin. Like what happens after these aliens die? And they're like, oh, okay, we've disturbed some sort of burial ground. We don't want to take scans or anything. And suddenly there's an energy surge, and another body appears, and it appears to be that there's this kind of conduit between there and somewhere else where these bodies are going. Eventually, this happens again, and Harry Kim disappears at the same time, and when he wakes up, he's somewhere else, and they believe that he's come from the afterlife.
Yeah,
and they bring somebody else from the other side who has a simple, fixable injury that they think the other side thought they were dead. The doctor fixes her, and it basically the story goes from there.
This episode has, interesting recollections of half a life for me, because it's like, well, we're not dead yet, but we have to sacrifice our life because we're a burden now. So I think about that a lot when I watch this episode. But I like it. One thing that I'm glad that we never got an answer for, but I'm frustrated that we never got an answer for, is where was this planet? Because it's neat how Harry's like, oh, we were in the rings orbiting your planet. Oh, we don't have any rings, right? Well, where were they then? Like, where is this coming from? Is it coming from?
They could literally be in a different dimension.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's what was kind of interesting is that, and it kind of ties into the whole idea of the euthanasia, is if the afterlife, if they believe that is an actual physical place, and they've kind of, through this vacuole that goes between these two different places, different parts of the universe, different part of the same universe, different dimensions. If it's an actual place, maybe there isn't the stigma of quote unquote dying, because they really believe they go on, and it's like, we have our bodies and we end up in this other place, and we start to, we'll see all of our family and friends. And it's really kind of an interesting idea that the world that we live in, or that Voyager's in, could be their afterlife.
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end, even Janeway says, well, there was this neural energy that was dispersed from the bodies right when they die, and it was the same as this ring energy, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, in our lives, none of us know what happens when we die, and there's so many different theories on our planet of what happens when we die, right?
Yep.
So who knows what it all is, but I think it's got some interesting concepts to it. I think it's neat the fact that the warp core is attracting this spatial rift, and so like these dead bodies just start appearing on Voyager, and they're like, okay, take it away to the morgue. They gotta lift up this spider web body. But it's very similar, like very odd at the end how Harry and Hatil, they like switch their bodies
because they look so much the same.
Yeah, like their arm size is identical. Like
yeah, I was watching this with my boyfriend, and he's just like, oh, yeah, that's going to go over well. Look, honey, you've gained all your weight back from being sick, and your head's shaped differently, and, well, okay, we'll just put you in this box, and I'm glad you're not talking, because you would think that they would still be communicating, even though they're wrapped in these ceremonial bandages and stuff.
The power of denial, my friend Aaron, the power of denial. So,
or the power of television.
But it's good. I like it. I mean, again, it's not my favorite, but it's a good episode. And then, of course, we get good old Jerry Harden, who played Deep Throat on The X-Files, and Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens in Time Zero Part 1 and 2.
I really like his earnest portrayal of this person because it's a cross between somebody who's sort of a religious figure, but also science at the same time. It's a very different type of character. He did a good job of kind of balancing that, that a little creepy because he's just like, well, we're not going to let you go because we need to know what happens in the afterlife.
Yeah.
They practically expected him to do like, oh, now we're going to dissect you, but then also like really excited that Harry's there because, wow, you are our link. This is the first time this has happened. I don't think that they would, clearly if they did not think that it was him when they put him into the what do they call it? The sarcophagus had
the pod.
Huh? The pod. Yeah, it had a name, I think. But if they didn't notice it was him when they stuck him in there, I don't think that they were going to like think that he somehow was actually the person who escaped or yeah. I don't think the logic was. I don't think we're supposed to think about that part of it too strongly.
But of course, I've seen this episode 50 times, so
right.
I do think about those things.
Yes, we do. I did like the whole design of the pod and everything like that. I thought it was kind of interesting. And my question is like, how in their society did this ever happen the first time? Who was like, oh, well, you're about to die. Let's put you on this space where this thing appears and.
Well, I've always said that about onions. Who's the first person to eat an onion? Like, honestly, dig up an onion, cut into it. You want to rip your eyeballs out of your skull, so I should probably eat this.
Yeah, most anything, when you think about it. It's like grabbing something out of the dirt and eating it doesn't seem like the smartest idea. All right, well, this has been a lot of fun. Brandon, where can we find you around the network and out in the world?
You can find me here on Trek FM doing new episodes of Melodic Treks, which is all about the music of Star Trek. And you can find me on Twitter at Brandon Mutala or in the Babel Conference. And Aaron, where can people find you?
You can also find me in the Babel Conference. You can find me on Twitter under the username GeekFilter. And you can find me as the co-host of Saturday Morning Trek, our dedicated Star Trek the Animated Series podcast and all things Trek in the 1970s.
Excellent. And we'll be back tomorrow with 2 more episodes of Star Trek Voyager, Prime Factors, and State of Flux.